please turn your cameras off. But we are super excited to have our partner here today. And a friendly reminder when the presenter is speaking to just make sure you have your microphone on mute, so the employer does not hear any feedback and he can hear your questions clearly when we come to that point. One more thing, I want to talk about attendance. I know you guys have been super good with filling out the attendance form. That's how you get credit for the session. That's how you get acknowledgement that you met the requirements and you get paid. So make sure that you're completing the attendance form when you finish this. And the other thing I just want to talk about is how to manage your camera and mic. We do encourage you guys to come on camera when you're asking your questions. The employer or industry partner really enjoys seeing your face. So make sure that you are turning off your camera and you're showing yourself, and then you can turn it off when you want. And if it has a line through it, it means it's not showing, and that's for both the video and for the microphone, okay? And you can turn on live captions by following the instructions on the screen. It's the three dots, and then go scroll down to turn on captions, and then you can receive captions for this video. All right. If you have any questions during the session, please make sure that you put it in the chat box. In order for you to receive credit for these sessions, you have to ask questions. You have to get involved and engaged. So make sure that you raise your hand. You put your question in the chat box. And again, you're welcome to turn your camera on and off. All right, so we are now at the moment we all been waiting for. I want to definitely thank our partner at Gotham Barber Shop for being here with us today. We have a barber slash owner who is going to talk a little bit about what it's like being a barber. And I am going to introduce our guest, Danny Torres. So Danny Torres is going to take over the floor. And then if you guys have questions as he's speaking, you just let me know.
Sorry, I had my mic muted. Hi, everybody. Like Anita said, my name is Danny, and I own a barber shop in Queens. Actually, what's interesting about my barber shop is that it's a Batman themed barber shop. It's actually the only one around, and I'm very proud of that. I've been a barber for over 10 years now, and I've owned my business for about 2. So I want to tell you guys a little bit about how that experience has been for me, and basically what it takes to lead up to basically where I am now from where I started and things of that nature. So we'll get started on that. So the first thing I want to say is that I began my interest in barbering around when I was 14 years old. The way that happened for me was that my father, actually my parents in general, just didn't really allow me to be in the barbershop setting for a while. I was going to local salons with my mom up until I was probably about 14 when I finally got my first real shape up, which is ironic to say because today I have no hair. But that pretty much sparked up my interest at a very young age. Since then, I've always been interested in how, just the art of barbering was in general and how really that sort of thing made people look and feel good. So when I was in high school, I then started cutting my own hair. I wasn't necessarily happy with the way people cut my hair generally. I was super picky. I was extremely vain about my hair. And that made me, it led me into a time where I was basically cutting my own hair for a long time. This was the first opportunity I had to really start getting familiar with machines and how it really worked to get your hair trimmed the way you want it to. I've always had an interest in cutting hair, but I never thought that this would be necessarily my plan A. While I was working my first job as a barber, I always stayed in school. I went to York College and I was doing children's education actually. And until I had started, building my own family, my wife got pregnant with our firstborn. That's when I really decided to take, barbering a little more serious into like career path. And honestly, looking back, is probably the biggest decisions I've one of the biggest decisions I've ever made in my life. And it led me into opening my shop, and more things came from that. Um, I got my license when I was around 19 years old, probably in 2011, 2012, when I shadowed a mentor for basically 8 years before I was able to take initiative and, actually open my own shop moving forward. Um, but that period in my time was super crucial because I was able to figure out the ins and outs of the business firsthand as a worker before I really discovered the confidence to open up my own business. So we'll jump to the next slide here. There's a few things about being a business owner that I like more than anything else, and one of the biggest parts is probably having creative control. It's always nice when you have something that's your own and you're able to do things the way you want to do things, and basically design something that people are gonna like, but more importantly, what you like to do, at the same time. Uh, my creative control over my place was, I decided to go with a themed barbershop. Um, I feel like in general, barbershops don't really have a running theme. When you see a barbershop, usually they're just mirrors and chairs and possibly, the generic graffiti on the wall or your favorite hip hop artist or that sort of feel. I wanted to stay away from that realm, and I wanted to make sure that I had a family friendly and also, a clean environment for people to come enjoy that. So when I went with the Batman theme, it was really saying like, look, we're kid friendly here, and really above all else, that family really does matter, you know. Um, Super important. One of the other things I like about being a barbershop owner is that we have the opportunity to set our own schedule, so to speak. I personally work 4.5 days out of the week. I take 2 consecutive days off. It's great. Well, actually, I take 2.5 consecutive days off, and it's great for me to, really be with the family and bunker down, and that way I'm able to do other things aside from being in the business. In addition to that, for me, ownership meant making more money. I have 2 children at home. They're both very young, and aside from me spending the time that I need at home, it was really important for me to have the sense of security over myself and my family. For me, that meant finally opening up my own barbershop. You for a long time, I've worked with somebody else for somebody else. And moving forward, I knew that this is a kind of career that you get more the more you're willing to put in. And so when I was working for somebody else, there was a there was a cap to that. You know, when you have full ownership and you make your own hours and your own schedule, you kind of see that form into something else. So go on. So one of the things about cutting hair is that this is a skill that can be learned, right? Like any other trade, the more you practice and the more time you put in, the more that trade will give back to you. What I mean by that is, the more time you practice, basically the more skillful you become over time. You get to understand the process a whole lot more. You become familiar with different types of textures and styles. Um, More importantly, other than that, you get to see a lot of people, and basically, you learn how to be more adaptive. You come across different types of different type of people every day, And so that really allows you to be able to become friendlier in the sense that you could mold your personality around that person. Um, One of my biggest advantages that I think I had was that I shadowed somebody who already cut for a long time. I was able to not only learn the good things, what he did know, but I was able to learn from his mistakes as well. I always recommend that when it comes to learning something, whether it's an apprenticeship or just you're falling behind somebody just to watch what they're doing. I think it's very important to definitely take notes on somebody who's been in the game for a long time, so to speak, or even has been doing it for longer than you, or perhaps might maybe even more successful than you are. Because as a new barber, it's really hard to like meet new people and have people understand that or not really understand, but it's hard to get people to trust you right away. You know, as a new barber, that's probably the most difficult thing. You know, that first couple years is probably the most difficult time as a new barber. Building your clientele and just becoming adaptive to everybody you meet, that will help you in the long run, and it'll help you on relationship building and just learning how to be around people all around the board. It's one of the most important things, actually. Going to this next one. So what you see here are some of the guys on my staff. Um, this first guy here on the left, his name is Elvier. Actually, what's interesting about Elvier is that Elvier, he has a hearing aid. Usually, he wears a hearing aid to be able to listen. Um, he's actually fluent in sign language as well, which for us, you know, looking from the outside in, it tells me that Elvier, number one, is confident with his skill set. He's actually one of my best barbers. Takes his time. You know, he understands hair very well. But what I like about Elvier the most is that he doesn't let his his disability basically hold him back from what he's wanted to do. He's been a barber for over 10 years now, super successful, has great clientele, and above everything else, I mean, he's a great guy, right? Here in the middle, we have Gabriel. Gabriel has been working with us for under a year. But what I like about Gabe is that he comes from the city. He's been a city barber for over 10 years. Worked on Wall Street, you know, dealt with the guys in the Wall Street game. And now he brings that skill set over to Queens. You know, he does great hot towel shave. He's really good with the scissors. And, you know, he's just well-rounded. It makes the shop well-rounded when you have people that, you know, specialize in different things, you know. To my right here, you have Justin. Justin's also very adaptive. He does everything the way you're supposed to do. I mean, what can I say about Justin? What I like about Justin, he doesn't let the usual barbershop stereotypes get to him, and he fights through and he makes sure things happen, you know. He's actually, yeah, he's really good. Let's let's see how it's done. Alrighty. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm going to show you guys how to get set up for a haircut. One of the first things we have to be aware of is that we have to sterilize everything beforehand. And so what I'm gonna show you first is how we sterilize the tools before we get started. Um, what I have here is called Cool Care. What Cool Care does, it makes sure the blades are cool. It lubricates, but more importantly, it also disinfects all your tools. So you definitely want to make sure you do this before you let the machines touch any client. You know, part of the reason we do this first is because the liquid takes about 5 to 10 minutes to actually work and activate. So this is the first thing you do before you get started on any client. Usually we keep our tools, dipped in barber side as far as the combs go. And so what you'll see me do now is just pull them out of my barber side just to wipe them clean before we get started. This is probably the most important process out of the whole thing because, especially nowadays, everybody's watching. You want to be really careful with this. Which reminds me, let me now mask up and get some gloves on before we bring the model over.
All right, everybody. So as he's preparing, I just want to make sure you can see the screen. Can you give me a thumbs up letting me know you can see the screen, or you can unmute yourself?
We see it.
All right. And can you see him specifically, not the PowerPoint?
Well, he stepped out of the frame, but we saw him by the chair. We see the chair and stuff.
Yep, he's going to set up. All right, perfect. So I'm going to go back on mute and let him finish up, but I just wanted to make sure everybody could see the screen.
All right, guys, now that we got our gloves and mask on, we're gonna get ready for the cut. The first thing I do here is I put the cape over, but that's not enough. What we have here is a neck strip, and the way we apply is we put it right between the skin and the cape, because you don't want the cape to make direct contact with the skin. This is probably the biggest step of barber school. Is the most time that they spend teaching you is how to just be hygienic about draping. In addition to this not making contact with the skin, it's going to help Steve over here not get hair fall between his shirt and the cape, which happens a lot during the haircuts. So the way I like to do, the way they teach you in barber school, first you got to run the comb all the way through the head. The reason we do this is to check for any imperfections on somebody's skin. If there's a mole there that you're not aware of, you don't want to cut right into it and, God forbid, give it a snip. No one wants a snip. So we do that first, and then we get into it. I've known Steve for a while, but for the sake of class, we're gonna ask Steve here what he wants, and then we're gonna get moving.
Today I would like to have a dark Caesar taper.
Okay. All right. So you just want it dark on top. You want to line up the sides. What do you usually do?
Right.
Okay. So what I'm gonna do for Steve today, I'm gonna give him a dark. Dark Caesar with a light taper on the sides, and I'll try to guide it step by step as well as I could. But this is gonna be a simple process. I'm gonna use 3 different machines here. One I like to use to cut some of the bulk down. Another one I like to use to get my fading done. And then the last machine I'll probably use is to get my details in. And so right now I'm gonna start by just taking some of the bulk out. One thing I mentioned earlier about hair texture, it's very important to know about your client's hair texture. Steve, he doesn't have the most coarse hair, but his hair is definitely not straight. Depending on what direction you take with your machine, you might come out with a different length. So it's super important that you understand your client's texture, hair texture. What you see me doing right now, I'm going over it multiple times. This is just to make sure that everything is nice and even. You don't want any strands of hair sticking out. later in the haircut. Now the reason I use the comb in one hand at all times is to help me not only comb through the hair, but remove the excess hair that is falling after it's been cut. Just gonna blow away some of this hair so we can get started on doing the side. Earlier I mentioned that Steve has different texture. It's important to understand that if you go different directions, you're gonna end up with different lengths with his hair. And so on top I did it with the grain, but on the sides to get a shorter look, I'll do against the grain. When we do this, we go over it multiple times to make sure everything is even. But you see here, these are two different lengths with the same clip. Now I made this guideline to help me out throughout the whole head. I make sure it's super clean so it's super visible and I'm able to work on it as we move along.
Okay, everyone. So as he's cutting the hair, because I heard there was a little bit of feedback at the end, I guess as he gets closer with the clippers, I want you to take an opportunity to enter your questions in the chat as he's finishing up Steven's haircut. Any specific questions around what he does? And you can enter that into the chat box as he's cleaning up the haircut. Don't be shy. So we had one question, and they asked, does it get hard standing for hours and using your hands?
So the question is it hard to stand on your feet all day and use your hands? It can definitely be exhausting. It's definitely something you have to get used to. But overall, at the end of the day, you just try not to think about that. I mean, it's part of the job, and so you learn how to work around it, and it's not unbearable. To answer in short, it's not unbearable. It's doable.
And we have another question. It says, what's your favorite customer experience?
What's my favorite customer experience? Uh, that's an interesting question. Also, it's a little bit difficult to answer. Me personally, I cut probably close to 100 people a week. Um, One of my favorite experiences, I guess I could share is you never know who you can meet doing doing a job like this. You know, you never know where it could land you. One of the most interesting people that I think crossed my path happened to be a professional wrestler. So this guy, he lives in Brooklyn and he wrestles for AEW. Now I didn't know that until we got through with the haircut and he told me who he was, which was even better for me because I would have been nervous to cut his hair.
And Kayla, you had a question. It says hair salon. Can you elaborate just a little bit more, Kayla?
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Kayla. You can go on unmute too. There's a question that says, what are the most difficult haircuts?
Uh, what are the most difficult haircuts? That is relative, I think. Um, to be honest with you, there is a such thing as a difficult haircut, but for the most part, depending on where your skill set is at, I mean, it becomes easier and easier with more practice. By now, I think the more difficult haircut to do, I wouldn't even really consider it difficult. It's just time consuming. Is probably something that requires the most precision, which is like a skin fade and beard, for example. You know, that's probably going to take you the longest and requires the most attention. You know, when it comes to getting a male, like a man's haircut.
All right, guys. So good questions. Thank you for your questions in the chat box. Um, I want anyone to take an opportunity and really watch what Danny is doing, and let me know if there's any future or there's students in the chat that have a future interest in being a barber or a hairstylist. Can you let me know in the chat so we can ask questions specific to that? Kayla, did you think about being a hairstylist?
Yeah.
Yes. Tell me, do you plan on maybe going to school for it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And what are some things that you like about this field? Can you share it with the class as he's cutting?
Yeah.
Okay. Elijah, can you tell me what would be your favorite part of the hair cutting session, or what are some of the things that you do when you get a haircut that you notice?
Would it be alright if I use? Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Elijah. Go, you got to take yourself off of mute again. I'm sorry. That's okay, Elijah. All right, guys. I know my guys are shy sometimes, so I'm going to let Danny finish talking you through the haircut. It's about another 5 more minutes. Oh, you really like your barber? That's cool. You need to like your barber for sure. So I'm gonna let Danny finish talking, and he's gonna talk a little bit about customer service and why it's important during the hair cutting session.
So what you guys see me doing now, I'm taking my last machine now and doing the details. Right now I'm detailing Steve's hair, making sure he got a nice clean shape up, and more importantly, just clean around all the edges. Um, One of the most important things about this job is not only knowing your skill set and your value, but you need to understand your customer. And so it's personally my favorite part of the job. I get to talk to all sorts of everybody's and learn just how to be a people person. Uh, so customer service is definitely super important. One of the things you could do to make your client comfortable is to try to build a relationship with that person. I personally know Steve for over 7 years now. Um, but to do that, first you wanna try to understand who they are as a person, whether or not they want to be talked to, because you'll know. Um, and more importantly, just knowing how to build with that person. You can ask things like, "How's your day been?" or "What are you getting into later?" And just really try to reach for conversations. This makes a person not only more comfortable with you, but more willing, more willing, more willingness to see you in the future. You know, this is one of the most important parts is doing the lineup in the front. You want to make sure it's nice and straight. So I don't like to rush this part at all.
Okay, thank you for the question. So, Danny, Elijah said he really likes talking to his barber. Mm,
A lot of times it's better to talk through the haircut because it goes quicker for both of us, client and craftsman. What I like to do, I check in the mirror to make sure it looks good. And as long as everything is looking good, we can set them up for the razor. So again, my razor is dipped in the barber side. I like to take it out, leave it in there to make sure everything's nice and clean. Every client gets a fresh blade. You never want to reuse your blades. It's a sanitary issue. And also you just don't want to use a dull blade in general. You're gonna lather up the skin a little bit in the areas that we're gonna use the blade, just so that we don't cause irritation in anything as we complete this haircut. Now, being that you're using the sharp blade, you always want to be careful with this. You never want to carelessly apply blade with too much pressure. The way we do this efficiently, we stretch the skin. When you stretch the skin, it's much harder for the skin to be cut. But not only that, you have to use it at a good angle because it can be dangerous. If you notice, whenever I am not using the blade, I have it tucked away. The reason for that is, God forbid, you tap somebody with the sharp blade. You don't ever want to do that. So every time I'm not using it, I definitely take a step back and tuck away the blade. Now, as we get to come to a close with the haircut, you want to make sure that everything is looking right. You definitely want to show your client, so I'm going to show Steve here what we got for him. Steve, please let me know if there's anything else I can do for you. Looks great. Great job. Huh? All right, man. Give me 1 second.
Hey, we're still here. If you guys do still have any questions in the chat, you can feel free to ask as well. We're just still here. There's just a minor moment here. So just give us one moment, okay?
So now that this haircut is finished, before we let Steve leave, what we want to do is clean him up real well. Make sure that as much of the excess hair is off his body. You don't want it to fall into his shirt. As you remove the draping. What I'm doing here, I'm just cleaning up a little bit of the excess that was left towards the bottom of the neck. And then we could apply some alcohol to the edges that you use the blades on. The reason we do that is to, one, eliminate some of the irritation, but to also make sure that the open skin here is nice and clean. Now that we're done here, we're just gonna blow some of this hair off. And send Steve on his way. Brother man, is there anything else I can do for you today? That's perfect, man. Thank you.
All right, let's give a round of applause.
Nice cut. Good job.
For Danny and Steven. All right. In the chat box, put your emojis. Danny is going to go over a couple more things with you guys, and then you'll have an opportunity to ask any questions. They said fresh cut in the chat. They said fresh cut. All right. So as Danny, yes, as Danny is cleaning up the area, I'm going to reshare my screen. Give me one moment. And we'll go from there. Give me one sec. All right. So a little bit about the job duties as Danny is cleaning up his area station. You always want to make sure as a barber that you clean and sterilize your scissors as he showed you. It's super important that you always maintain a sanitary environment because you're working with different clients. He showed you how to drape and pin protective clothes around customers' shoulders to make sure that the hair is not dropping down. Nobody wants to be itching after a haircut, right? And it's super important that you follow those directions. Another thing that he talked about is cutting and trimming hair according to the client's likes. It's important that you are following their instructions. You are using the hairstyles that they asked for. And if it requires clippers or a comb or a handheld blow dryer, that you have those resources available. And then the last two that is on this list, it says make sure that you ask the patron, you know, what do they want? What hairstyle do they like? And you're meeting their needs, and you clean your workstation like Danny just did. He made sure that after every client, he cleans his workstation before going into the next client. So I'm going to go into the next slide. And Danny is going to just talk a little bit about some of the other things you can do.
So some of the other responsibilities a business owner has, it's not only just coming to work and getting their haircuts done and make sure you're ready to go. You really have to make sure that you present, everybody that walks in with A1 customer service. Aside from that, there's things that go into it, like all the accounting and the roll books, and just, keeping good track of like what the numbers are in your business. Aside from that, what we do have is, what you are responsible for is also hiring and purchasing, and also how you're going to market your business for making people wanting to be there, right? Other than that, you got to maintain your inventory of everything that you need, whether that's the neck strips, the drapes, the gels that you sell, or any sort of products that you might need, either to do your job or to help the people around you get it done too. Above everything else, you want to make sure that it's a clean, friendly space for everybody to want to be a part of. You don't want to just, wing things and just come to work as if it's a regular 9 to 5. You want people to feel welcome on the way in. You want them to want to come back on the way out. Sometimes even you might want to keep them there for as long as possible, and really just make sure that they feel all the way comfortable. Now, the barber license. There are 2 different ways that I know how to get your barber license. One way of getting your license is going through the state. So if you sign up with the city, I think what they do now is either 1,200 hours or 1,500 hours. But regardless of that, you shadow a master barber. They teach you all the skills on a textbook level, and basically you use that to then get licensed after your practical exam. The second way I know is actually the way I've done it personally. I shadowed somebody and I got my hours done through them by watching, and as long as you're working with a master barber, essentially, they're able to sign off on your hours to move you forward and get your license. Earning potential. So In 2019, the median pay for a barber was about $26,000 a year. That comes out to about $12 an hour. I wouldn't get too fixated on these numbers. This, from my experience, is a starter number. You might see this number for the first 2-3 years until you finally break into your confidence and you're able to reach a better potential. And this is absolutely does not include the tip threshold and the potential of that.
Okay, so in the chat box, I want you to put
what are some of the important qualities a barber should have in the chat box? All right, guys, so I'm looking to see what important qualities should a barber have in the chat box. All right, guys, good communication skills. Okay. Hand-eye coordination. Good. And Rob, I just want to make sure you guys can hear me, right?
Yes, we can hear you.
Awesome. Good. These are good qualities that someone should have. He or she should be good with scissors, as they should be nice to customers. Good with a razor. Thank you, Kenneth. These are all great. And again, you know, just remember to always, always, always have a passion and be authentic about where it is what it is you want to do. I'm going to also share the last screen for our guest, who's just going to give you his last advice about important qualities to have and his advice.
The most important qualities to have when you're either in this line of work or trying to do this business, my best advice to anybody who's starting up is, number one, just be authentic, be yourself, believe in your abilities, you know, pay attention to detail. And as long as you work hard and you're honest and you're patient with the people around you, you're gonna do good. You know, there's no I in team either. So you really got to be a team player when you work in an ambiance like a barber shop. So another piece of advice is just in general, when you're looking for anything, you really got to explore the career field and check the different opportunities in that field, right? You have to be open to learning different skills. You have to sometimes step out of your comfort zone. And if, you know, you really just gotta you gotta find your passion and just don't give up. That's really how you make it happen, you know.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Danny. Let's give a round of applause.
Thank you guys. I appreciate everything. Thank you.
All right, guys. So if you have any final questions, please put them in the chat box. As a friendly reminder, you need to fill out the attendance for today. In order to do so, you need to complete the form attached. I'll put that in the chat box for you guys. But please, any questions that you have, please put them in the chat box. Oh, and guys, you're not seeing double. That's actually Steven's twin brother. He's also getting a haircut today. All right. Any questions in the chat box, guys? You guys did good today. Let's show some love and give Danny and our Steven a round of applause. Danny, everyone is saying thank you. Oh, they can't hear you. Hold on. Put his mic. They can't hear you.
Thank you so much, everybody. I appreciate you guys having me. I hope that I delivered on every aspect. Thank you so much, really.
Thank you, guys. I'm going to put the chat, I'm going to put the link. Oh, thank you. I'm going to put the link for attendance in the chat box, and then you guys are free to go. Thank you so much. Sure, Rob. I'm going to stop recording, and you can, I'll stay on real